Now, meanwhile, New York becomes the first state in the nation to pass a gun control law in the wake of the Sandy Hook school shooting tragedy. Now, last night, New York lawmakers approved Governor Andrew Cuomo's aggressive anti-gun plan. It was signed into law just a short time ago. It expands the number of firearms prohibited under the assault weapons ban, and unsafely storing an assault weapon will now be considered a misdemeanor. Now, police will now be required to have a registry for people who own assault weapons. It bans the internet sale of assault weapons. It limits magazine capacity to 7 rounds. I hope you don't have more than 3 intruders in your house. And gun crime sentences will be increased. Now, pistol holders as well as assault rifle owners must now renew their permits every 5 years. And one measure that I actually agree with is the bill protects legal gun owners from having their identities revealed under the Freedom of Information Act. And now therapists, they must notify authorities if they believe a mentally ill patient poses a threat to themselves or others. And after last night's giant gun grab, my next guest immediately expressed his outrage. Watch this.
Tonight, we preach about saving lives. Not long ago, I think a woman was in Georgia. She had several young children. Her husband showed her how to shoot. Somebody broke into her home, came after her. She shot him, I believe, 6 times. Tonight, we're going to pass legislation that if she had 8 rounds in that chamber instead of 7, she'd be a criminal. We haven't saved any lives tonight, except for one: the political life of a governor who wants to be president. And I voted no, and I only wish I could have done it twice.
Pretty powerful. And tomorrow, President Obama will announce his comprehensive gun control power grab through executive orders. He will once again bypass Congress. Now, this will likely include banning assault weapons, blocking the importation of certain guns made overseas. But President Obama's willingness, his even eagerness to unilaterally implement 19 executive orders related to gun shows and guns proves once again that he's willing to stretch the Constitution and presidential powers now to the breaking point. Now, he's done this several times before. We saw in Libya, where President Obama did not get congressional approval and launched air assaults over there. We saw when President Obama made recess appointments when the Senate wasn't in recess. That violated the separation of powers, and of course, we have co-equal branches of government. We saw when President Obama decided to issue an executive order stopping the deportation of thousands of illegals. Why? He couldn't get the DREAM Act passed. We saw it when he jammed through Obamacare. Remember Scott Brown, 41st vote? That was the guy that was supposed to stop it. He used the reconciliation process. We also saw it when his Justice Department refused to uphold the Defense of Marriage Act. We saw it when Obama unilaterally weakened welfare work requirements. We saw it when Obama used his presidential powers to target religious institutions and push through his contraception mandate. Now, we also learned that tomorrow, when President Obama announces his far-reaching gun grab, he's going to do this while surrounded by a group of children they say wrote him after the Newtown tragedy. This is the ultimate example of exploiting and politicizing a tragedy. We're going to have much more on this coming up in our next block, but first we'll take a look at the first set of tighter gun laws already enacted here in New York as we bring in Republican New York State Senator Greg Ball, along with Democratic State Senator Michael Gianaris. Good to see you guys. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you.
You said something. I'm going to ask you about what he said. This woman in Georgia, a guy breaks into her house with a crowbar, and she goes up into a crawl space in her attic, and with her 2 twins, the guy goes up there. She happened to hit him with 5 shots. That's all she had in the gun, 5. What if there were 2 guys? He walked out of that house. Andrew Cuomo, he has security. President Obama has security. Hollywood stars have security. Our money in our banks have security. How do you stop them?
It's all about finding the right balance, Sean. We already have a 10-bullet limit in New York.
Now it's 7. As of right now, it is 7.
And the idea is we want to make it as difficult as possible for people to walk into a movie theater or a school or whatever it is and do the maximum amount of damage.
Whoa. Those are the criminals that don't obey laws. What about the law-abiding? What about this woman? If there were 2 intruders, she missed 3 times, and she had to take out 2 of them. What would happen then?
What we're trying to do, Sean, is make it as difficult as possible for criminals to do as much damage as they do.
But unfortunately, what has been accomplished accomplish is that New York State is making it as difficult as possible to protect your family. And it may be inconvenient to this governor and his political future, but there is a Second Amendment. And what we're doing is we are creating an entire category of new criminals out of law-abiding people. And the real criminals are going to continue to commit crimes.
Let me speak about this, Governor. Hang on one second. You speak about this, Governor. Let's show the governor in a State of the State address. I want everybody to watch this. Our founders, our framers, they never mentioned hunting. They never mentioned deer. They never mentioned any of these things. They talked about freedom and liberty over tyranny. Watch what Andrew Cuomo said.
Forget the extremists. It's simple. No one hunts with an assault rifle. No one needs 10 bullets to kill a deer. And too many innocent people have died already. End the madness now. Pass safe, reasonable gun control in the state of New York. Make this state safer. Save lives. Set an example for the rest of the nation. Let them look at New York and say, this is what you can do, and this is what you should do. This is New York, the progressive capital. You show them how we lead.
He just made sure he will never be president. You tell me how this law makes it safer for a stay-at-home mom or maybe a woman that lives alone after a divorce that has a restraining order against a crazy ex-husband or boyfriend. How does that make them safer? I want to answer that.
I will. It makes it harder for the person with the restraining order against them to have this weapon to do damage to this woman. It makes it safer for her children to go to school and not have to worry about some maniac.
You live in New York. You got to be kidding me. You live in New York. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You got to be on drugs. With all due respect.
No, I'm not actually.
No.
Wait. There's no need for you.
He's one of the few in the assembly maybe not on drugs.
With all due respect, if you're thinking that the criminals are going to obey the laws, you're not thinking straight. I'm talking about law-abiding citizens.
You're not listening to me, Sean, and it's not me who's on drugs at this table, so I don't appreciate the allegation.
7 bullets. Thank you. How nice of you.
We're not
7
saying
bullets.
that criminals aren't going to commit crimes. What we're saying is we're going to make it as difficult as possible for those criminals to exert the maximum amount of pain and death possible. So if someone walks into a school, they won't be able to shoot rapidly, bullet after bullet, at our children.
So the next time, wait a minute. The next time they're going to wrap 8 guns, pistols with 10 shots each, and then you guys are going to come back and say, well, we took a first step, but now we're going to ban pistols? Is that what you're going to do?
I'm glad you brought up the slippery slope. You mentioned the founders. Greg mentioned the Second Amendment. I want to address this once and for all because we're not doing anything revolutionary here. It was Justice Scalia, no liberal, as you know, Sean. In the case of D.C. versus Heller, 2008, I'll quote him. He said, the Second Amendment right is not unlimited. It is not a right to carry any weapon whatsoever in any manner whatsoever.
I agree with that.
And for whatever purpose. But already, we've had an assault weapons ban in this country for 10 years. The world did not end.
And it did no good.
You know, I'll just tell you right now, in New York State, we have a mental health system. And if you look at these tragedies that have happened, you're talking about violently, mentally ill psychopaths. We have a mental health system that treats these people like numbers. It's a kangaroo system. I have a mother in my district that has a schizophrenic bipolar child. She fears for the community and herself every day, and we haven't done a damn thing to solve that situation.
I go to the slippery slope part. So now a mother at home defending herself against a drug addict or intruder.
Sean, they don't want the mother to have the guns. They don't want the retired police officer to have the guns.
We don't want the criminals.
These guys, they start with registration, they go to confiscation.
Hang on a second.
They will send
what do we do in the next incident? Because Cuomo mentioned the word confiscation. Somebody
Cuomo wants to confiscate.
No, he does not.
Okay, first, you may be on drugs. If you don't think that Cuomo wants to confiscate, he's on the record on the Fred Dicker show saying that he supports confiscation. I know, listen right now, I know personally, in the negotiations that he sent his staff in, most of them from New York City, that don't know that
I realize I'm in the lion's den here tonight. I've now been accused by both of you of doing drugs, which is just comical.
Their entire focus was confiscation of ammo and
nothing we did is revolutionary last night. All we did was tighten up existing laws.
I got
an assault weapons ban that we made tighter. We have a magazine limit that we made a little bit tighter.
Let me say this.
And we have a universal
background check. If you have an incident
check
where 3 intruders break into somebody's house and a law-abiding citizen runs out of his 7 bullets and that person dies, I argue you will have blood on your hands.
Sean, I don't have to use hypotheticals.
You will be responsible.
Aurora, Wisconsin, Sandy Hook. We have real-life examples
and
of what's gone wrong.
Governor Cuomo's staff will have more than 7 bullets. I promise you that.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. All right.